dynamics will work in such a way that parental projection here always at work. It makes it dangerous, but it also at the same very time makes it quick. It makes it very quick. It sets everything in motion. And it allows us this tremendous joy and tremendous opportunity, because they come together, of liberating ourselves from any hiatus that we may have came up with in the process of maturation, or in the process that arrested us from maturing, because that's what parental affair is. It is our parents who are first guardians in charge in terms of setting us free or holding us prisoners. It is a domino effect, or it is like into the seventh generation. It's not their fault. That's how they've been done. So this works in that same way. So at some point in someone like yourself, like you, this is going to be settled. And the family dynamics, the family karma begin to be worked out here and now. There will be refusal to pass it on. It doesn't matter you have kids or not. In you, this will be settled. This will be resolved.
What I encountered today in meditation, and I feel is something that's been there a very long time in me. Is I feel an obstruction of energy, like a kind of a block between myself and you, and on one level, I have given myself with absolute totality into the work. As soon as I felt this, okay. The heart said yes, and so I just, boom, kind of threw myself in, and also open to love and open to just offering whatever is there into the fire in a way. And what I encountered then was, I suppose I could describe it as being on the edge of a blind spot in terms of relating, and something that's become very important to me in the last months is relating, because, well, I fell completely in love and experienced myself in totality. I met myself in that, and it shone a light so bright on every aspect of my life now that nothing wants to stay restricted anymore. And then when I come here and I open to what's possible, and then I felt this kind of, I wouldn't even call it resistance, I wouldn't even call it not trusting, but there's something in it that has juice and I can't access it. It's almost like a scar tissue or something. And without going too much into story about it, but I'm sure it has something related to previous teacher-student relationship, wanting attention, being afraid of having praise and then getting the opposite. And at the same time, feeling like, no, I want to experience all of it. I don't want to hide myself in any way. And so I feel like, on one level, I feel like it's not even needed in this work to put your head so much on the chopping block. But I also feel like, okay, if there's some pride or arrogance or whatever is in there, let me just put it out there, whatever it is, and see if there's something that can be met on this level also, because I'm not that used to working on an energetic level, and I always feel that everything gets integrated more when it's met on the personal, on the spoken, on the revelatory side of things, not to be left in the shadows to fester. And I kind of saying it without any expectation, because when we have a pain inside, because there is also a physical pain connected with this, it's like I know there's also a hankering to release that somehow as well. So I'm kind of just wanting to be curious and be open and put myself, I want so from my heart to melt into the work, into totality of myself. But yeah, I just feel this kind of need to express it. Whether there's a long answer or not doesn't really matter. The juice is in that, just allowing myself to be seen in that, if that makes sense. And so I feel that's kind of it in a certain way, but maybe there's more that's underneath it as well.
But when you said block, right? why did it feel like block? Not why there is a block, but how do you know it felt like a block? In what way it introduced itself, announced itself as such?
Yeah. It's more, perhaps it's a comparative experience when I felt that my heart and soul has been completely opened, and then this feeling of a slight contraction wasn't there. And that is just what's kind of there. I don't even know if it's really a block in a certain way. It just feels like something is perhaps restricting the flow.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's look into this now. For a moment, we'll leave aside this whole dynamic of teacher-student, simply so as not to kind of dive the head-on immediately into this what could kind of also create a possibility for missing altogether of what is going on. Just like, let's leave it aside now. Let's just speak about attraction and aversion as universal or universally experienced modalities, right? So, it's a cosmic force. Electromagnetism itself is that. It's a combined force made of the attracting and propelling forces, right? That's how it acts. Like if you turn two magnets in a certain way, they would propel away from each other. And they will only join when plus minus, right? So the other sides would create that. So this force, it's a universal force, and it's very important for us to understand that no matter how categorical this may sound, and maybe at some point it goes against the grain of our experience, we would prefer to be otherwise, that whenever there is attraction, there is repulsion. They go hand in hand. There's no such thing as just attraction. And we know that in every relationship. And the more intimate the relationship, the more acutely we experience that. So the more intimate the relationships. In other words, this is where, at some point when we came up with this series for the online darshans, we started with, right, the mother of all awakenings, right? So the first relationship is the one with the mother. Whoever happens to be in that role. So that mother-child, right? That Madonna con bambino, right? The iconic, archetypal, right? Let's say in the Christendom, right? A lady holding a child. And because we know the story, it's a mother, Mary, Virgin Mary, holding baby Christ. But it exemplifies this, every mother and every child, right? Okay, it transcends this because it's the story. So this is where it begins. So all this, we all know that relationship is the most dynamically charged. Whoever is in that position, on whosever laps we sat, whosever bosoms we suckled, whoever happens to be that out of whose hands we received, will always be the most loved and the opposite of that. And if we are true, that is so. If we kind of leave pretenses aside, we reconcile, we learn to reconcile, or we remain, let's say, in the extremes of whatever we prefer to settle on. We also know that to be true. The first people we blame in terms of this business of growing up are those who are our immediate guardians. So this is why I said that we began the series with that mother of all awakenings, right? To re-examine, revisit the relationship between mother and child. We all were children at some point. And so it goes, right? Of course, mother and child, this father and child, siblings, first love, second love, love per se. Every relationship we've been in, if you look into that, it was always accompanied by this attraction, the force of attraction that makes us arrested towards that person. But once this is consummated, right, then another force can be given space. Obviously, if the relationship is not consummated, if the object of our desire is not attainable, we don't know what repulsion is. It's quite obvious, because the attraction did not meet, the magnets did not conjoin. It was not consummated. We all know this, and this is one of the perhaps most obvious but most difficult dances in relationships. This is why people can't stay in relationships for too long, because it's very, very daunting affair. We are encountered. For every quality that we admire, on a certain day, we are destroying our loved ones from behind the scenes, even secretly in our thoughts. Some of them we will never pronounce, because it will be amounting for destroying the person and the relationship. Maybe not the person, depends on how strong they are, how rooted they are, but the relationship certainly. Is that true? Am I making things up? Is that rings the bell, or am I just making it all up as I go? Right? What, you love your husbands, your brothers, your mothers, fathers, all the time, unconditionally? Excuse me, bollocks, right? On the first night, that's just not true at all. Every time, so this is the understanding of the forces of nature, the force of Kali here is at play. It's the foundational universal power, the force of Kali, this electromagnetism. So whenever there is an attraction, there's a propelling force. Whenever something brings something together, there is already forces that wants to pull them apart. That's what sets things in motion.
I just wanted to add here that this was also part of the experience I had recently, was experiencing this strong attraction, also the repulsion within that, also, and then a collapsing of that. So falling through that and into this was this moment of everything reflecting back, came directly from my own, like kind of dropping through that experience of, what you just talked about. And although there was an object of a person on the other side, it was completely seen, like the whole projection was the dance that I don't know, it just served as this collapse back through that. And I suppose that's why I also feel now like, oh no, like there's more layers to it, more layers to that when I come and sit in front of you, for example, and it's like such an old thing. I'm like, I've been bashing my head about this. In a way, this magnet analogy is really apt, because it's always how it feels, the moment you want, like even subconsciously, attention, then you feel like the magnets are going the opposite and like just don't meet at all. And it's like the more you try to navigate that and like drop beneath it, it's like you can't do that. So I just wanted to add that into
Yes, of course. So what's the solution? What's the way about it? Since there's no way about it. It's simply to understand the underlying forces at work. So now this was given just in terms of, let's say, how whenever there is attraction, it's bound to be accompanied by propelling force. We can call it repulsion even. And it is experienced when something is just so easy to tick us over or tick us off. It's a stuff of legend. This is why in maybe more tribal-based societies, or not more, tribal-based societies, the relationship was always spoken of as this, what will come in full package. None of that kind of manufactured from the blue screen notions of love. It's just a very, very down-to-earth, messy affair of being together. So like entering into union, entering into the alliance, entering into the, right, whatever that is accompanied by this full understanding of the respective roles, which is all out of the window in the day and age we live in. We're kind of now finding our ways in a doldrum of all that, right? Perplexed with all the totally messed up ideas that are being wired into the system because of misunderstanding of the working of the fundamental laws of nature here. So simply being aware of that creates a tremendous possibility of being put in touch with the source of anything that stands on its way. So now we can, once we acknowledge this, we can move to the student-teacher relationship, which here simply, I'm not insisting, I'm simply suggesting what has been spoken already many times, exemplifies the, in its essence, a combined nature of all relationships, but particularly, and what makes it tricky in our day and age, the parental affair. Particularly if the teacher is not a coy and is not providing, not particular, providing if the teacher is not a coy and not playing dirty and not trying to pretend. A lot of teachers today would like to pretend they are not authority. And I don't know why they do that. It's like someone who is all over the place trying to be modest. This is to me is like, why? Why? Go and watch some cowboy movies. If you're good, you're good. You don't need to freaking pretend here that I'm nobody, you and I the same, whatever, it doesn't exist. Yeah, ultimately none of this exists. Yeah, we can read Vashishta Yoga, Ribhu Gita. All this is like, there's no teacher, there's no student, there's only Brahman. There's no teacher teaching either. No one taught. Right? Yes, there is an ultimate truth. If this truth sets you free, that's it. Let's hear it. If it doesn't just set you free, let's continue the work. So, this is why I said, as long as they're not fake, and as long as they're not playing these, to me, they're dirty tricks. Because once you hear, you are in a position of authority. Doesn't matter how we play it out. I can sit here like that dude, like, that kind of a, moron in my language, in a kind of like throne with the elephant tusks and call myself Nityananda or whatever, right? It's covered in gold and this. We can do that. Or I can just sit modestly here like this little school teacher from England or like, it's like the same thing. The same thing. It's just like cultural prerequisites. What if I'm sitting on a throne, suddenly I will command more respect or more authority? Or if I'm sitting like that, I will command less or more? It's like, what are we, fools here? Kindergarten is boring. To me it is. So let's look into the core of it. So the dynamics will work in such a way that parental projection here always at work. It makes it dangerous, but it also at the same very time makes it quick. It makes it very quick. It sets everything in motion. And it allows us this tremendous joy and tremendous opportunity, because they come together, of liberating ourselves from any hiatus that we may have came up with in the process of maturation, or in the process that arrested us from maturing, because that's what parental affair is. It is our parents who are first guardians in charge in terms of setting us free or holding us prisoners. It is a domino effect, or it is like into the seventh generation. It's not their fault. That's how they've been done. So this works in that same way. So at some point in someone like yourself, like you, this is going to be settled. And the family dynamics, the family karma begin to be worked out here and now. There will be refusal to pass it on. It doesn't matter you have kids or not. In you, this will be settled. This will be resolved. In some cases, it will be resolved, and it's total freedom, because this is the fundamental relationship. Fundamental relationship. You know Ayurveda very well. Look at it from that perspective. Look at the Jyotish. Look, all this is sun represents the father, moon, like every aspect, every divine heavenly body represents fatherly and motherly aspects here. You see? And then comes the teacher. Then comes that mentor, that comes that principle, that universal principle. And that in itself encompasses all this and immediately reflected back at all times. You see? So what the opportunity here is to revisit, re-examine, and see for what it is anything that somehow impeded us in the first place in our process of unfoldment, to be who we are, to what is our birthright. And of course, because of the state of affairs of our current culture and civilizational setup, parents are the guardians and the first to mess us up. Unfortunately, they're the first to mess us up. So it is true to a very large degree of that whole psychological campus, the psychology-driven campus. Then all forms of whatever that makes us impeded in life happens in the first years of life. It is absolutely true. Because that's when we learn, we mimic, we create strategies. These strategies are just as important when the strategies of grabbing, the reflex of holding, primate. No, don't hold holding reflex, you'll fall off. Your mom cannot hold you all the time. Sometimes she needs to pick up and go, so you grab on for dear life. Millions of years, yes, but the reflex is still there. So therefore they say, holding on to dear life already shows in the way the baby grips, shows the desire, the pranic force to live. I'm here, and I'm here to stay. Right? I'm not talking about this elderly holding boys over the cliff in Sparta. Right? We'll leave that aside. So this is where the great territory overlaps. Just as in the schools of psychology, whatever, transpersonal, clinical, it's very important. First years of life, we are set off, and the relationship with the mother is crucial. It is from the mother we learn everything, absolutely everything. From the mother. It is the mother who sets us also into life with all that, what will be then confidence or insecurity, or a mixture of both, and everything. The ability to relate, love, receive, give, all comes with that. With first touches of the mother. With the way the mother holds things, sleeps, breathes. That's what it is. See, so of course our civilization now is totally wild. Wild and barbarian in that sense, because mother's role is business as usual. Pick up your shit, you have to earn money, because it's feminist movement. If before one man was making enough to feed the family, it would have to be two. That's all about feminism as far as I'm concerned. There's nothing to do about liberation of women. It's to just make more money out of fools. That's all, really. And we buy into it. Because some this or that kind of like set it, oh yeah, of course. No. Frida Kahlo was a very feminine woman in a very feminine culture. She's just like, why is she adopted into an icon of feminism? It never got me. Kind of veering off the track here, right? But it's all connected. It's all for you to make connections. So when it comes to this, whatever blocks we encounter or you encounter, it's good. It's very good. It's very healthy. You see? Because it may also flare off, or something may bounce off it, or something may show you those, let's say, nodules that need to be dissolved. You see? But you need to be sure you are sitting in the presence of not a coy teacher. That's your business, that's your responsibility. Because if I'm a coy, what I'm going to tell you, Daisy, sorry, I'm a coy. You didn't hear that. Everyone is okay, no money, no refunds, I'm as good as it gets. Right? So I will do everything to pretend I'm good and worthy. Am I not? Who wouldn't? Or if I'll start playing this is not... No. I'm not doing this. But it is your responsibility, as it is everyone's responsibility, where they found themselves. Whom do you want to call yourself? Whom do you want to call teacher? Unfortunately, that is one-way affair. That part is a one-way affair, you see? And it is for good reason, that it is a one-way affair. And sometimes teacher can be seduced into a kind of like liking someone more than they do. And unfortunately, they can do them disservice by doing that. I know that from personal experience. Sometimes it's just not good, you see? It's better be tough, in a way. Tough for the reason, because the toughness comes from greater care, greater love. Soon as you prefer someone, soon as you favor someone, you do them injustice, disservice. So this is why it's one-way affair. Once you align yourself, then every encounter, sweet, tender as honey, will embalm you, reach you, because this relationship is like that. I live through that. I know what it is like. The sweetness that is experienced, that bhava that it gives. And any other opposite encounter of that immediately shows insights into something that hasn't had the chance, found its crevices to remain. You see? So, win-win situation. Win-win situation. Knowing that for every attraction there is another side of that same coin. That's how they flipped. That's how they are. So, whatever you make of it, if you encounter this, you see, it could also be seen as a silver lining, there and then. Silver lining. And knowing that this also part of how that cosmic dance is here is created, how it all whirls together, makes you internally wise, you see, about all relationships, absolutely all of them without exception, all of them. All of them. The most intimate, with dearest of the dearest, you see? Where we will be put in a position when we are that mother, where you are giving that unconditional love, and it is up to you to also be detached, because that kind of Jewish mother here will hamper someone for life. Because it's a selfish, I'm using this as a, like that, epithet. Maybe it's a New York epithet, Jewish mother. Who, you know that term? Because, well, Jewish mother will want her son never leave the family. That's why it's said. It's like the selfish love of the mother. He's 45, he's still little boy, still has his room, you know? And every girl who came around the house was scrutinized, and she's not good enough. My darling, my dumpling, my cutesy poop. Don't worry, I will never let anybody to eat you. So, this is also, you see, the wise mother, she rises above that selfish love. Because she knows if she doesn't release, who will release? Who will release her child? She doesn't release. You see? So.
Just following on from this, what I'm also has been relevant within the process, and what I've also kind of heard you say indirectly to someone, that there are times in the process that you can't trust yourself, you can't trust that inner guidance, and this is something that has been very, very strong lately, like even sometimes very subtle, like just nudging me, do this, like intuition, and other times like literally go to the shop, buy this, like paint this Kali yantra, like very, very specific, and like I've just been kind of experimenting with just following that completely, and this has led to this kind of explosion of consequences which have been very cleansing actually. But from listening to what you're just saying now about relating, and in a way what comes up is about preference, and as the heart opens so much and you feel like it's really shining truth on everything, and you feel heart connection really strongly with certain individuals, and other people maybe not so much, there's even like a kind of closing. Like, how does what you say kind of meet this in terms of discrimination? Because I have also noticed lately that I'm a little bit like a loose cannon. Like if I go, I've found a more propensity to go and be with people lately, be in the city, go and experience things again, where I've been much more pulled back. But when I speak to someone, they ask me a question, I just blast them with like 1,000 words from my heart, and I come back like, oh, what, this was inappropriate, and but I felt I had developed some kind of discrimination, but it feels that's a little bit off or something at the moment. It is and it isn't, because everything that's unfolding out of that ultimately led to some truth being revealed. But just within this sphere of relating, I don't know if you have anything to add on this at all.
Well, you kind of answering that as you speak, right? You answering that. You holding this, right? You holding yourself in a way answerable, right? As far as I hear you're holding yourself accountable for your actions. You're not just like you, even if in retrospect, even if post factum. So as long as we don't, I don't want to go too much into this, because what this simply is that when we grow in every way, when we experience something that somehow undoubtedly makes us in every way more expansive, more inclusive, more tolerant, more compassionate, more forgiving. Because whenever we're more, it's good to know that we also can simultaneously grow in the departments, in these phases of expansion, where that what is the opposite of that also is more. So this is also would be a folly to think that we only grow in positive. This is the rosy facade, the kind of like, we sell spirituality with that. We know that not to be the reality of the situation. When qualities are magnified, negative qualities also get magnified. We can become more cunning, more clever, you see? We can become more in the department where we become self-righteous. And see? So it's like, we're entering what would necessitate the continuation of what was spoken today before lunch in response to what you have suggested as a, not you yourself, but as a group, individuality and samaveshana, right? Individuality in the process of transformation, what takes over, and role of individuality, right? Just to equate Shiva, Jiva, Jiva, Shiva, last step, this is not enough. If we don't go now into that, where is the work then? Where's the vigilance? Where is the virtue? Do we abandon, discard? That's why we would have to revisit that. Would have to go and speak to that. Otherwise, we will end up causing harm, potentially. Because there's nothing worse than hijacking the highest truth. When the highest truth hijacked, by that, what is still pretty much subjected by all these samskaras and psychological tendencies, is very well known. So in a way, we bashed the religion, but we would have to also look with tremendous degree of discrimination and see that many religious theological expositions and theological ways of looking at it were safeguarding sincere wayfarer, sincere seeker, safeguarding, so that one doesn't suddenly self-install themselves, right? That kind of an idea of pseudo-Christ or something, like declaring oneself to be God and become on par. It's a very tricky affair. It is a reality of the situation, but how does it translate into the reality of situation of daily life? Hence the question. So now, more specifically, is this with regard to when we also become more in everything, we have to be aware that other structures will be magnified. Are we balancing this? Are we squaring this? Are we holding this in our awareness? And another thing in a practical level, this propensity to relate directly, cut through, just as long as we don't turn into self-righteous beings, right? Like self-entitled, in a sense of, like, whatever I do now speeds up the evolution of humankind. So I'll tell everyone who comes across me or in whom I'm in communication with how things are, right? So just as long as we're aware that, right, we need to meet people at their level of consciousness. And sometimes it can be a painful experience that those who we care the most, we want to communicate that, but we know they're not ready. So our communication, in a way, is a subtle act of, I don't want to call it violence, but it's imposing. It's an imposition on our part, right? Whereas if we are to simply lean back on these universal principles, love, it doesn't impose anything. It's just, love is what it is. And when we love and feel loved, it's sufficient into itself. And that what is the most healing, the most, there's nothing that can be compared to that. So just that mere awareness of that. But yes, also not to punish ourselves for every act of misgiving, for every act of, let's say, running on autopilot. You need to know that certain tendencies get expediently spun out of the system, and that includes also that, suddenly like running through town, and running, and just suddenly kind of doing this and that, It's also part and parcel of that. It belongs to that. When things get spun out of the system, sometimes we are propelled, forced to do things, as if the things are done by themselves, because that's what it is. So we need to be patient and forgiving to ourselves, without making it into a job, without making it into a profession. So this is why that kind of healthy attitude is like, you see, saddle the horse, take the bull by the horn, you know, but it's like taming the wild horse is not riding a horse. It's a totally different exercise, totally different enterprise. You know, you can be an excellent cowboy, cowgirl, but it doesn't mean that you're rodeo. Rodeo is a Russian roulette. It's a suicide mission. So some people who jump into these roles prematurely, right? Then it's a irreversible process. In my experience, irreversible. It takes tremendous, maybe like somehow there will be a second awakening, right? When one will wake up from the nightmare one placed oneself into and reevaluate one's life. Why did I do that? What have I done? You know? Am I too cryptic now? Am I suddenly gone into too cryptic? But that's what it is, you see? So this is why, as long as one is not following these propensities that I have observed many do, particularly if there's like so-called genius track, grace receiving, and running away with it now to save the world, happening. See? I'm not saying that in relation to you, I'm saying that in relation to that, so that we speak about it in all-encompassing aspects. I always say that the best way to be placed in a position of any guidance is when there is a complete and utter reluctance to do that. Like almost not wanting to do that at all. Best when one doesn't want to do it at all. You see? So it's like I say that, you know, professional painters don't paint because they like to. They paint because they have to. That's what distinguishes a Sunday painter and a professional artist who gave their life to it. Right? Same could be extended to cowboys. You know? They don't ride horses because they like riding horses. It's a tough daily job, you know? And I read somewhere that the authentic, how to know who is authentic cowboy and who is just a pretender wearing a nice hat. You know how? If he is anywhere near 40, anywhere, every make he moves outside the horse will be like a pirate. They're all limping, you know? That's what it does to the body. They're not like Matthew, McConaughey, you know? He's a Texas born, he's inbred. It's far cry from it. So, you know, like, you know, it's like, So, you are safe, you're good. Don't worry about it. You're good, Daisy. You see? Just, you're smart, you're quick, sometimes too quick, but that's also good, that's a quality. Use that quality, use that for what it is. Okay?
Thank you so much.
You bet.